Good evening. How are you? Well, we're doing a sit and talk today because the roads, though cleared in some places, have snow in others, and then the worst thing is they have ice under snow and what appears to be ice. And I did get out, and I was all over the fields feeding our pigs, and I can do that because there are drifts and still thick snow on the ground, and so the chances of falling down are few and far between. Anyhow, it didn't happen. I thought it would be good to recommend something. I'm not going to go into it in too much depth, but Foreign Affairs has a great February issue, and it's all about America, and it's all about, well, I'll tease you with one article. It's called Stress Test. Can a troubled order survive a disrupted leader? That's the notion of it. Margaret Macmillan has written this article, and she's a very fine writer. And one of the reasons it strikes me is because I liked reading science when I was younger, still do, but read less of it. And Isaac Asimov had written a book called The Foundation, and in it he creates this character, the mule, which is the living, breathing, at least in fiction, image of Trump. It's a mutant who threatens to overthrow all order and restore unpredictability. Now, Trump may have a method to his madness, but this article is a good article to make you think about it. And the entire issue has different things, so you could sample it. I don't know if it's available free online. I've been a subscriber. I found the issue when I was in college looking for sources of material to inform me about what some of these things meant. I was always interested in that. Now, what is going on currently that's worth mentioning? Some of these things give us a sense of what's wrong with felon Trump. For example, he is flying the flag at Mar-a-Lago at full height rather than half-mast, and the significance of that is he seeks formally to not honor Carter in death. There are very few people that he honors at all because he is the exaltation of all things. In my opinion, imperfect. In his opinion, perfect. Now, we also have a string of things that suggest why Trump should be more humble. Felon Trump's cabinet picks are backtracking, and hearings are going to begin, and so we're going to be hearing about them. The principle here that I think is the standard by which you measure these characters that felon Trump is nominating is if you say one thing and then you directly contradict it. At law, there are instructions that say things like, well, you can't decide which one is true and which is not true, but inconsistent is something that you can consider of the character of the author of these inconsistent remarks. Now, I disagree in this instance that that method of analyzing inconsistent statements makes sense. So, for example, RFK Jr. has been, a phrase went through my head, which I'm not going to use, talked about vaccines can't be trusted. Now he's backtracking on that. Now, he held the position so long, and it's been so hotly contested, for him now to say, oh yeah, vaccines make sense under certain circumstances, hedge it in, mess around with it, and so forth. So that's one of the nominees is going to the Hill that has no business being in any cabinet. Not just for that, but for a whole variety of things. Hegseth, that they want to put over in charge of the Defense Department, said all sorts of negative and derogatory things about women. And now, he said in recent days, some of our greatest warriors are women. Which of those two statements do you think is true to his belief? His belief hasn't changed. The guy's a scoundrel. He has no business wearing a uniform. He represents us, and he's a sexist and drinks to excess. I mean, it'd be one thing if in a lifetime somebody once got drunk or something, but this is a pattern for these people. I guess he'll be hanging out with Kavanaugh if he gets nominated successfully and is confirmed by a really questionable Senate. Marco Rubio has been really hard attacking China on TikTok. Well, he sees it a little differently now because that's not where Trump is. And he had said it was a Trojan horse, and now maybe you're not so sure. Okay, so those are a sample of them. You go through all of them, and there are more of them. In my opinion, there's not one that doesn't have some problem, and the question is how severe that problem is. Now, the Republicans have a 53 to 47 vote margin in the Senate, and that means they can only lose 4 votes for any person. So if the Democrats all 47 vote, then they have to hold on to they can't lose 4 votes. That's really basically the math. Now, as a game, yes, that is the rule. As a matter of good government, it shouldn't be easy to say the ones I just mentioned have no business being in the cabinet in those positions. And the others are a little more complicated, but there's a whole vast number of these guys. Now, when I was a vice president of the Eastside Democratic Club in New York, I had an opportunity, though young, to participate in discussions about judges being nominated. Democrats were overwhelmingly represented in Manhattan. So technically, Republicans might never be a judge. But what happened was they would split the nominations. It was a complicated thing. I didn't have anything to say about the decisions. I was too young and I was an observer. But I learned a great deal from it. And one of the theories was, we have so many lawyers and so many are really competent and gifted that without regard to party, we are actually doing the public a service. Now, they're literally elected, so what would happen is you would choose a judge who had no opposition. Okay, that's a complicated process to nominate and approve someone, particularly when they get voted on. So what we're talking about here is we have a Senate that's going to have a background check, which is going to be full or stunted, depending upon how much leverage the White House has exercising to diminish the inquiry. And then people are going to posture, and they're going to be threatened behind the scenes. And these people are going to come up on the Hill, and they're going to say things like, I would respect stare decisis, all precedent. And that includes Roe v. Wade. Okay, that's not up this time, but you get the point. The point is, you can't trust these guys as far as you can throw them. Could they show some class? They could, and we can hope they will, and we improve that chance by commenting on it and saying that this is not the way to run a great nation. Now, Gabbard was another one who was, and you may agree with this, she was against destroying any evidence under FISA that is against U.S. citizens. And she said such information should be buried, destroyed, because we should not be invading the rights and privacy of citizens using the this foreign act that is set for not U.S. citizens. Now she says it's essential. So what do we have? To go back to those glowing moments in past presidencies, at least as they were believed, a phrase became well known, which was the best and the brightest are in this government. Not this one, the worst and the dumbest. And in terms of ideology and character, entirely unsatisfactory who they are. So now a couple of other things are kind of interesting going on. One is that a federal judge ruled that Judge Luce Cannon, her objection to releasing the special counsel's report, forget that. So it's going to be released, but it could still be appealed. So I think even this Supreme Court will approve it, but we'll see. I am not an advocate of the Supreme Court, as you know. The Supreme Court is like a bunch of political hacks who do what they're told and pretend to be independent, even though in recent days there was a conversation between Alito and Trump. And there's a story about what they were talking about, which is not about the court. I mean, how does that conversation occur? And Trump has made a statement. He's stumbling his way to tell us how he's going to reduce consumer costs. And there are two particular, I don't know what you would call them, reforms, proposals. They're not anything. They're nonsense. One is that we're going to change the supply chain, and I don't know if you're familiar with how some of these large retail stores handle it, but Walmart, JIT, just in time system, so that they push the burden of holding goods at their location until it's necessary, say, for a Walmart outlet or some other business, just in time. Now, this chain that we're talking about, this supply chain, these are all private firms. There's no ability to change that. They have the opportunity to do it themselves, unless felon Herr Trump has another idea in mind, but I don't see how he could carry it out. I think even the court that has been compromised by all the Trump nominees in the past, I think even they would have trouble with it. But he's of the view that if we adjust these things, we can lower oil prices, and that'll lower, because there's so much energy price in everything we buy, that's going to be passed on to the consumer, right? And you and I are more likely to levitate than that's going to happen. But that is so the 2 points are: we change the supply chain and we lower energy costs. Coming from a guy who's against all these alternative ways of having energy that does not endanger us, that doesn't cause radiation, doesn't cause greenhouse gases, So Trump says he's for drill, 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 swill, swill, swill. What are we to do? As much as we can tolerate it, whether it be the Mule from Asimov's book or The Real Thing, felon Trump, we have to, at every stage, talk about the sunlight and encourage leaders to come forward to actually stay the distance. Special Counsel Smith didn't stay the distance. If Trump has his way and people let him push by, then, it won't be a prosecution federally in D.C. It won't be a prosecution in Florida. That's already happened. And they're trying to find ways, which says something really sad about our entire system presently, to close down the Georgia case, because like the New York case, the Georgia case is a state case, and Trump can't pardon himself and could actually be held accountable for what he did. Some may be whispering, I can almost hear you say it, that, hey, isn't there a rule that says you can't indict a president? No, there's no constitutional rule. There's no legal rule. But the Department of Justice has a memo in which they say you can't indict a sitting president. Well, why can't you? The presidency, there are several ways to get an illegal presidency. Let's take Trump. You could move to bar him from taking office based on the fact that he tried to overthrow the government, Article 14, Section 3. When he was impeached, particularly after the January 6th attempt to overthrow the government, inciting the insurrectionists to go to the Hill to put him in office even though he didn't win the election. That impeachment, he could have been convicted and been barred from holding office in that circumstance. He was impeached before that. Nobody did anything about it. Then he was prosecuted, and all the energy was spent delaying it. Our chief law enforcement officer did nothing about it. So how can a nation dominated by reasonable people be confounded to watch the installation of a felon in the White House? Nothing compares. And of all the bad things that have happened by or because of past presidents, this guy, he just carries away the prize. So, felon Trump is the objective of our scorn, ridicule, and calculated and reasonable attacks for what he's failed to do, what he does in violation of the Constitution and the laws, of good taste, of decorum, all of the above. And we already see, people like Bannon, well, I'm going to stop Musk from siding with Trump. I'll see that he can't even get into the White House. We see the nominees for his cabinet are underwhelming. We see confused attacks at allies of ours, whether it be Canada or Greenland or Mexico, and the drill goes on. So it's not you or I who are out of tune. The person out of tune is Trump. I started this, I guess, thinking about what is an inconsistent statement and how we know which is the true measure of a rabid mind. And we always know Trump is lying unless he's admitting to something. And he doesn't always know he's admitting to something. But he has admitted that he wants to be a dictator. He has admitted that he wants to do all of these things. And there are people that keep saying, he doesn't really believe that. Well, but he does. And how many data points do you need before you get it? Unless you're afraid to go up to the guy, grab him by the collar, metaphorically speaking, shake him and say, we've had enough of your bullshit, and that's the end of your game. And we're going to make sure that any person in America who supports you does not get reelected in the midterms 2 years from now. And we're going to bring a motion on the floor to bar you from being president. I'd like to do it before the inauguration, but if it takes a week or so after that, we'll get to it. There's nothing that says we can't do that. In fact, all we have are the founders who tell us that perhaps we should do that. So those are a few of my thoughts. Nice visiting with you. And with any luck, things will, off our small farm, be melted. The temperature went to the 40s today, and it went back and forth. So I'm hopeful that I'll be out instead of working on a treadmill and exercising and moving weights around and stuff like that. So all the best. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.